Well, good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome back to Inside the Game. Jonathan Turner alongside Mr. Nathan Wangler. Excited to be back at this for the fifth day. And Nathan, it's funny because yesterday I had some concerns that we weren't going to get in yesterday's episode, and that mainly because of my traveling here to Chicago yesterday morning. And I'm just glad that we're able to kind of get another one in yesterday and obviously tee up here today. So excited to be back at it.
I know you're one with the times, JT. We've had conversations before. You play a little Fortnite, okay? I get it, and I love me a little Fortnite. That's what I play in the evenings, and it's kind of like when you got to jump out of the bus last second because you were in the middle of doing something. You only got a few seconds left, so you just land wherever you can, and all of a sudden you get down there, and it's just action right away. You just got to go, all right? But you and I understand sometimes you just got to paratroop into something and just get it done. It's no different with broadcast. It's no different, logistically speaking, from anything else that we do. It just is what it is. So you got on, you did the thing. You were up at 3:30. I still don't know how you did it. When did you go to bed? Did you even take a nap yesterday? You said you were going to take a nap and you didn't. You took a
I did
shower
not.
instead.
Yeah, I got back to the. So I mean, I had meetings, right after we finished. I hopped in an Uber and headed over to McCormick Place here in Chicago, where the convention's taking place. I met up with number of different leagues and people throughout the early afternoon. Made my way back here. I think sometime around 3 o'clock Central Time, 4 o'clock Eastern. And my intention was to take a nap because I was exhausted, but for some reason I couldn't do it. So I hopped in the shower, changed, and back into my original clothes because I felt that would be weird to show up 2 hours later in new clothes. So uh, I went back into my original clothes and
Okay.
made my way out to some. I had the Michigan High School Soccer Coaches Association, which is a great partner of ours. They had a kind of like a meet and greet social last night between 4 and 6 Central Time. So I went and partook in that, met up with them, and shook some hands and said hi some coaches there. And then I made my way into the convention hall where I met with a number of leagues and a number of potential partners in the soccer space, right? And so it was a very, very very good evening. I've got some follow up meetings today with a number of those same leagues, and yeah. So I'm here to be able to continue the dialogue about what we're doing and how we're making the game of soccer better in this country from all levels. Because again, that's the thing that we talk about a lot, Nate. At least me and you do. Not maybe so much on the air, but the things that we're doing to elevate the game and make it more accessible is really really cool. And to think that we can take a feed from really anywhere in the world and take that feed into our studios and be able to commentate on it, add graphics, instant replay, all the things that we do. And to be fair, a lot of things that we probably even take for granted is really what the soccer space is in much need of at the lower levels. And we are going to do that this year. And I would say buckets, but more like Are you there?
Oh, there we go. All right, back in it.
So, yeah, sorry. I don't know. My internet,
Yeah.
whatever. Apologize. I am in a hotel. Um, uh, but anyways, I'm not quite sure where I lost and got disconnected.
Well,
Maybe you could.
you were talking about expanding coverage of the youth levels, and the importance of that, and just making the game more accessible, which is crazy to me how far along that at least broadcasting equipment has come, in our ability to get everything that you need to call a game. But the other aspect of that too, is JT, is also we always talked about the importance, especially in episode one, of connecting. Right, I mentioned the old ABC method, right? Always be connecting. That's how you're going to get opportunities to be able to do stuff like this. And obviously, it's crazy in terms of the amount of leagues and the amount of games and the amount of levels that we're going to be covering. My question is, and we can get into, I wanted to do a little mailbag today. I know we were talking about it in previous episodes. We got some good questions from people outside the podcast that they wanted to hear us chat about, but managing the business side of broadcasting is something that's also really big. And it's something that I didn't even realize, especially when I first got into it, the fact that there is that aspect of it too, right? It's not just showing up and calling the games. As much as I would love that to be the case, because obviously there's a lot of work that just goes into calling games, but there's that other aspect too of building connections and knowing people within the industry. And I always find it fascinating because if I were to, obviously walk you into let's say a minor league baseball setting, a lot of people would know me, and I'd be able to connect with those people, and I'd, kind of have you by my side and have to, introduce you to a lot of different people. That's me with you anytime we go anywhere in the soccer sphere. I remember like state championship Saturday when we were there, you knew pretty much everybody in the building, and I was there to, introduce myself to everybody in the building. How have you gone about managing the business side in making those connections? Because you mentioned fear the other day, and I thought that was interesting because there is no room for fear in broadcasting, whether that's on air, but that also expands to off air too, and getting in people's ears and making connections and becoming an option, somebody that can be in someone's back pocket. How do you do that?
Well, I think it's good that you separate those in the question because again, my fear that I might have in regards to, or the lack of fear that I might have in regards to approaching a game or a situation from a broadcasting standpoint is very, very different from that approach that I would have in business, right? I've been around soccer my entire life. I played it as a kid. I played it through high school and through the club space. I was a referee for 20 plus years at the youth and college and high school level, semi-professional, and I coached it. So specifically in Michigan, I've always really, really known the base of coaches and the people within the community of soccer in Michigan for most of my life. So for me in Michigan, it's really easy. But where I don't have my connections and don't have this deep rooted communities nationwide, and I have to take that no fear mentality when I go into these meetings. And I mean, I'll give you a perfect example. I walked into a room last night. It's a convention hall. You're talking about thousands of people, right? You're walking around, and the last time I came to a convention like this, I had someone next to me, and we could kind of tag team and go together and have a support. I'm here alone, this time, and not that that's a thing, but that in itself can be something that can cause people anxiety and fear, right? You're walking into a room full of thousands of people who you do not know, and you're walking at the tables and you're introducing yourself. And you've got to find a way to be on, in that minute, or that 2 minutes that you're going to have in front of that table. So, but yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a great question. They always say this. We talk about it. We talk about it from time to time. Is it's not about what you know; it's about who you know, and it's true, right? Who you know matters more so than what you
Yeah.
know. Loyalty can come in a lot of different variations and shapes and sizes, but once you're in with a business or in a partnership with a team, a club, or an individual, that loyalty can have long impacts on how you do things and how that relationship continues to last. So I'm a firm believer that a partnership has to be a win-win-win, right? Not just two wins, right? Because if there's in our world, we have three potential partners, right? We've got our viewer. I've got the business partnership that I might have with another entity. We have an employee partnership too, or freelance partnership, right? These things have to be wins for everybody involved. I can't, as an owner of a business, just walk into a room and make a decision that is not in the best interest of everybody. Now, sometimes people might get the short end of the stick in regards to what that win might be. They might not get the same piece that maybe other, but as long as there's a win for everybody, that's how we should operate in this world. And and that's the reason we're going out in these meetings and having these conversations. So I think it's a great question.
As an individual, though, and it's again, we can get to our rapid fire mailbag here in a little bit. I always find it interesting because I know that our job here at the network. Good morning, Peter. Yet again, is our most loyal listener, dude. It's back to back days. Hotel Wi-Fi strikes again. It's
It's
funny.
true.
Every time we hop into this, it always recommends that we use an Ethernet cord to connect to the internet, and yeah, unfortunately, that's not available every place, everywhere you go.
Well, I
So
have Ethernet, but I don't think the
you
room does.
do.
To be
See, I
fair,
don't. That's what I
I
was going
mean,
to say. I don't think there's a connection in there, even if you
yeah,
did.
I've got a truck full of cords, right? So I can go get whatever.
Right.
Actually, that's not true. My truck's back at home, but
Right.
yeah.
But for you, and it's funny this dynamic of talking on this show every day. Sometimes it does feel like I'm interviewing you, but I kind of get into that mode, especially when talking about this and learning more about the game of soccer and everything. I'm still learning more about you. And we've only been working together here for a couple of years, but providing that coverage for youth sports is really important. And we've talked about why that's important. Is the ultimate goal still for you, though, to be able to, on a personal talent level, call games at the highest level? Because that always still remains my goal at the same time, too.
Yeah, it does. Of course. I mean, I get energized every time I get to go into Oakland and call a women's basketball game. And while I don't consider myself the best at that, and I think we always talk about this, what our sport is, right? What we love calling. Um, I love calling basketball because it's an opportunity for me to learn, right? To learn the game, learn all aspects of it, which I just don't have that same love or experience as I do for soccer. So for me, it's a different challenge every single time I
Right.
step into that role. But yes, I believe I have the chops to call an MLS soccer game. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind. I believe I have the opportunity to call the highest level of collegiate soccer in this country. I've done it alongside the likes of Dean Linke. I've done it, in a lot of different variations, and there's no question in my mind that I can do that. The biggest challenge that I have and same thing with you is in this world that me and you are in when it comes to our platform and what we do is the information gathering along with the timing to prepare, right? I often say this that if like John Strong or Taylor Twellman or any of the top level talent in the soccer world were to come into our world, slide a roster in front of them, how well would they do? With nothing else, just a roster.
Yeah. I
And
think
and that's
yeah.
and
No, no,
that's the thing, right?
yeah. Yeah. Well, in professionals, it's interesting. I heard this a couple of months ago. I was doing high school football, and they sometimes they'll have ESPN 961 there, depending on what the game of the week is. They just so happen to be there on that particular day. And I'm talking with the guys, the higher ups, the dudes who, do professional teams or they travel all over the place with one team. Like I'll give you a perfect example. Grand Rapids Griffins. Shoot, I'm blanking on his name right now. Kaiser, Bob Kaiser. He's
Okay.
their play-by-play guy. He talks about how at the high school level and guys that are on our level doing youth sports, he's like, people think it's hard to call games at a professional level. Like it's the same sport for the most part, but he's like, I actually don't know how you guys do it. Like, I know how I do it because I'm with the same guys all year round. For the most part, I mean, some minor things might change here or there about the teams that we're playing against. But for the most part, all the information that I need or that I want or my spotting boards or stuff, that doesn't really change a whole lot. You know, you might get one guy that goes up to the Red Wings, or you might get a free agency pickup here or there, but you're constantly around them. You're constantly traveling with them. You're in the locker room. You're on the bus. Guys, at our level, we might have 8 teams in 1 week that we're calling for. Like we don't have the opportunity to familiarize ourselves with an entire roster or an entire group of people. It's just not something that we do. So I find it interesting that you say that, because there are guys at those higher levels that think exactly that same way. Like they're kind of thankful that they don't have to go through that process all the time. Because you're right, that's just a different level to do it on the fly. It's uncomfortable.
Well, yeah, I was going to say too, like when you start talking about the higher levels, right? And I'm going to exclude the NFL for a second, because that in its entirety is completely like a whole other level of whatever. But if I were to imagine what it's like to be, calling an MLS game, John Strong, Taylor Twellman, whoever is working those games, I would imagine that there is they are getting game film. They have access to game film from both teams, right? Probably some kind of an exchange system that they have access to highlights anytime they want to. Not don't have to go to like Apple TV like me and you, the normal person is. There's some kind of an exchange that's getting given to them that allows them to go in and watch players. They also have production meetings where they are sitting with the entire crew who's involved in the entire game, and they are walking through, prior to any time going on TV, what the parameters are, what the storylines are, what is going to happen pregame, halftime, postgame, right? That's all happening, a day or two before the actual broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
Meetings with coaches. They are meeting with coaches in a conference style Zoom type meeting. They might even do it in person. They may or not, based on the type of game that they're going to go watch and where it is in a playoff situation, they might be actually at a practice or training session watching them train. Right. So, they're, and again, they're doing probably one game a week, so they can dedicate their entire time to making sure that they have everything that they need. They also have probably a staff of people, assistants, that help them gather information and put it in an organized way for them, because, you don't want to miss anything. And and again, I put the NFL in a completely different category, just because they're only calling 16 games possibly a season. Soccer, there's so many games. You're talking about 50 50 games that these guys may or may not call over the course of 6 months. So, but no, it's, and I would love every moment of that. I would love every minute to sit down in a meeting like that, be a part of that, and have that chance. And like anything else, it's all about being in the right place at the right time in the right circumstances. And so yes, I would love nothing more than to call a game at the highest level of the sport in this country. I don't believe I have the chops to call a basketball game, but I do believe I have. There's no doubt in my mind that I have the chops to call a soccer game in the Major League Soccer.
All right, you ready to do some rapid fire mailbag questions here? We got some good
Sure.
ones from people. All right.
Hey, but real quick, before we do that, I think we need to address this aspect right now. And I'm not anywhere near California. Obviously, I'm in Chicago. Might be slightly closer than you to California. But with that being said, I just want to say that our obviously our hearts, our minds, our thoughts are with everybody that's lost a home or been impacted by what's happening in California right now. I mean, regardless of where you think or what you think or don't think about something in regards to this whole thing, I think it's important to know that there's not a single person on earth who's in that situation that ever wants to be in that situation. And our hearts and thoughts and prayers are with the families and the people impacted by this devastation. So,
Yeah. Well, and it like even if you live over in that part of the country, you kind of have an understanding that things like that happen, and they do. But to this extent, a little bit different. And I think we've all the damage that it's already caused to people who live over, in those areas that are affected. So, yeah, you're right. No, I feel exactly the same way. It's not right, and I just hope it gets sorted out soon, because it's always the people who least deserve it, who end up getting affected the worst by these disasters.
Yeah, and
So
honestly, I know there's always this time and place, for the political side of this and asking the questions. It's
yeah,
like my parents once told me, when you go to a funeral, you don't walk up to the person that's impacted and say, what and start to drill them on what happened, right? They're grieving, right? And obviously, everybody wants answers as to why and what and who and all that stuff. There's always a time for that, but for some reason in this country, we seem to want to get right in there and just start asking these questions, you know, I understand that there's this need to know why. I do. I understand it. But there's a time and a place for that. Right now, the only focus should be on stopping it and allowing people the opportunity to be able to find a normalcy in their life, right? And have support. That is the only thing that should be discussed in these moments. But we just turn into we need to know right now, why is this? I don't need to know anything right now. I'm not even in it. I don't need to know anything, and that's the thing, right? That's why it's funny too. And this is not something I don't ever really want to get into the politics, and I will not get into politics. But I do think it's important because we are now on a national platform, Nathan, and we need to talk about these things and at least you say, hey, we're thinking about people when this stuff is happening. But as part of the media and as part of this landscape, and while our sports don't have anything to do with news in this regard, it's our job to be responsible about it. It's our job to not look at pointing fingers when people are in pain, you know. And there'll be a time to ask questions. There'll be a time. We're a country that has been built on hearings. Every time we turn around, there's a hearing. I mean, so believe you me, there will be hearings from now until probably when I die. There'll probably be something in 2099 where I'm on my deathbed to be a hearing about this. So I'm not worried about there being hearings. Just be patient about that and let people get back to some. People are in pain right now. Let's not do that. So, but anyways, fire away, my friend. Fire away.
first
No pun
question.
intended.
Oh Jesus! First question: most bizarre experience you've ever had covering games. Now, this could be covering soccer games on your own platform or going to broadcast for someone else. Most bizarre experience you've ever run into as a play-by-play guy.
I mean, I probably could group a whole bunch of them together. The most bizarre thing that's happened to us, I'll give you two examples. One is, and I love you, parents. I really do. I love moms and
Oh
dads.
boy.
I love you,
Sometimes.
and I'm so grateful that we don't have to go to stadiums as much as we used to, because parents would just walk up to us in the
Yeah.
middle of our game
Yeah.
and tell us we're calling their kid's name wrong. They would just or walk up to us and they see that we have a headset on. And it's weird because as someone who has went to many many sporting events in my life, I would have never in a million years walked up to someone that had a headset on
Nope.
and start talking to them.
That's
And
actively talking and
yeah,
engaging.
it's like but that happens, when
Yeah.
you're like, and they keep going, so it's like
Yep.
so like that's all kind of grouped into into one thing. But another one, so we did and I was going to talk about this yesterday because you were talking about kind of the most memorable moment or something that's hard, this game that you were part of. You talked about the Max Clark game that you were part of, and I was thinking about this game, and I've had a lot of games I've been a part of and been really fun and cool experiences. Nothing to the level that you've been a part of, but the players that we've called and seen. But we did a game last 2 years ago. It was a Catholic League finals. In At that time it was at Gabriel Richard High School, and it was Toledo St. John's versus Orchard Lake St. Mary's. It was their first time that they'd ever made it to a Catholic League final, I think, in their history in the Catholic League at this level. And those two teams were just battling it out. In that game, 4 red cards were given out. It was like 11 yellow cards. If you actually go to our go to our YouTube channel, well, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can actually go to our. I actually made a short video about it and actually did a counter of how many yellow cards or how many there like. And there's like 15 like referee conferences that took place during the game too. It was just such a bizarre game. As a former referee, I try not to get involved in the refereeing aspect of stuff as far as kind of berating risk. This was the worst officiated refereed game I've ever seen in my entire life. It goes down as historic. That's how bad it was. And they had conferences. They're giving out red cards. Nobody has any idea what's going on. The team that had all the red cards given against them ended up winning the game in a shootout. I mean, like, it just, you can't, I mean, it was like written for like made for TV. Like, there should be a documentary about that game. I'm telling you this right now you need to go watch it. It was October the 23rd, 2023. You can watch the highlight video or watch the whole game. But I'm telling you, if you watch it, you'll go, "Oh my God, what did I just watch?" it is the most bizarre thing you've ever seen, and I would go watch that game.
That is wild.
Are you
11.
only asking me these questions, or are we going to go back and forth? Or you're
No,
going to ask them
we're going to
too?
go back and forth. I'm just kind of processing exactly what you just said right there. 11 yellows.
Some crazy number, dude. I don't know the exact amount of
Oh
yellows. Don't quote me on that. But I'm just telling you right now, this
my
game was the most bizarre game I've ever seen in my entire life. The team that won should not have won because they had like nobody on the field to play. They red carded a coach. There were three players that were missing. They were down to
God.
the last. I mean, it's something you would like see like in a FIFA game, like on your video game, where you're like trying to get tossed out
When you're
and seeing
going
how
out of
many
your way to
players.
just take people out.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
it was just one of those games, man. It was unbelievable.
So remind me of the Super Bowl where which Super Bowl was it where the lights cut out?
Oh, it was New
Um,
Orleans. It was a Superdome in New Orleans, right?
yes.
And that work they
The
played this year too. And it was
Broncos
40.
and
No, it was 49ers and Ravens.
Ravens. Okay, so that was the Harbaugh
Remember?
Bowl. Okay, I
Yeah, remember
remember
the
that.
49 the 49ers were actually on a
Yes.
roll and the lights turned off or no, it was the Ravens that were on a roll. The lights turned off and the 49ers got back into the game or something
Started
like
coming
that. I
back.
forgot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Jim, John, Harbaugh, that whole thing. Okay.
Yep, yep.
Well, I had something that was similar. Like kind of like you, I got a few of them. The thing is, and you can relate to this, and it's kind of funny whenever I talk to Division 1 broadcasters or broadcasters who are at the professional level, and I'm talking routinely all year round, right? They go from minor league baseball to Division 1 athletics in the off season and maybe like G League or professional volleyball. Like everywhere they go, they are doing some sort of high level sport because they are going literally from stop to stop with the highest production value in the best places that you can imagine. Now, it's not true everywhere that you go, but for the most part, you're pretty well set up with the stuff that you have, and where you're located, and you don't have to worry about a lot of odds and ends. Being at the lower levels, being where you and I are, especially when you were going from stadium to stadium, setting up all your equipment, sometimes in these press boxes that were not built for more than 3 or 4 people, whether or being on a track or down on the field or out in the elements, like that is just kind of what we deal with. And it's to now at this point in my career just is what it is. It's just a part of the job. But I always see the frustrations from people who are just joining, like the people at those levels, they don't have to deal with it and they have no concept of it. So I always find it funny when I talk to them about some of these experiences. And one of them at Cornerstone, in order to get to your seat, you have to walk on the track. There's a track at the highest level that kind of surrounds the stadium. So a lot of times fans will literally walk right past where our broadcast is. And our entire operation is plugged into the wall behind us. Now, we've found ways to kind of reinforce it and hide it a little bit so that, people passing by can't see it or trip over it. But there was a couple of different times, and again, it's always bizarre there. People would always walk into our pregame shots, whatever. A few different times. One time, calling a game, or actually, no, I was running the camera, saw someone walk up to it, right? It was one of the only outlets on that particular wall. And, I see them looking at it and thinking about it. And mind you, I'm running the camera, so I'm seeing this whole thing take place. Unplugs it from the wall. Right? Our entire operation goes black. And her reasoning for doing it was because she wanted to charge her phone. That's why. So it took down our entire broadcast. And then there was another kid that walked by a couple of months later that saw it. And I saw this all take place in slow motion. He saw the plug, thought about it, looked back at it, went, grabbed it, unplugged it, entire operation just comes crumbling down, the whole thing. So that's kind of a look at what we deal with sometimes on the lower levels. There's just a lot of people around. Sometimes the setups aren't that great. But to circle back to my question about the Super Bowl and the lights turning off, I was once doing a volleyball game at Cornerstone here in Grand Rapids, and there was kind of this tornado, storm, hail, something that rolled through. We're in I believe, the fourth set, and it would have been the deciding set, and we're getting towards the end. And someone goes to serve the ball, and in the middle of playing this ball, all of the power inside of the gym, inside of the stadium, inside of the arena just goes off. It just goes black. Everything. And not only that, in the middle of that, we get a notice that there is a tornado warning in effect. So everybody, home, away, doesn't matter. We all, players, the whole nine, we all have to go shelter in place in the basement of the gym at Cornerstone University. So we're in the weight room and we're all just kind of sitting there together, and we ended up continuing the game the next day. But it was one of the more bizarre experiences when the entire place just went black. And I mean, that just kind of begins the list of the weird things that I've had to deal with and have come into contact calling games at that place. But like I said, I got a list of a few more, but there's just a few of them for me. Oh boy. Oh, is this the game you were talking about? Oh geez.
This is the game, dude. You got to see this, dude. I'm telling you right now. When you first off, this is the first. I'm about to show you the first red card. So uh, it's about to come up here. So right here is where this ball is played in. You'll see it.
Ooh.
So the referee comes in. He ran into the goalkeeper. Okay, so the player's not sure what happened. Out comes the first red, and boom, there it is. That 31 minutes, and that's in the first half of this game, by the way.
In
Right,
a
so
1-1 game.
in a 1-1 game, right? So first half, they're playing with 10. Okay, let's fast forward here. They're still playing with 10. That's now in the. I think we're still in the first half. Yep, now we're in the second half. Looking for when they say this. Okay, now they're still playing with 10. It comes to 9. Up here comes the referee here because we had a field camera. Oh, now they're playing with 9. Here we go. So referee's coming over. He's got the red card out. Red card is the coach. Um, and then another. This is again. In this now they're playing with 9 players. 2 players getting tied up.
Oh.
Right, and yep. So you'll see the card come out again. Yep, stopping the clock. And to be fair, in this moment, we're kind of like, oh, what do we even do? You know, I talked about it yesterday. And like, what do you say when all this is happening? You can see he's going to that back pocket right now. He's thinking back pocket, and again having more conversation. Again, we weren't sure who he had
How many
red carded
players are on the
before.
field at this point?
9 players, and the referee's walking over again, going to give another card. And this goalie makes a huge. So now St. John's is playing with 8 players.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and again, like in this game, it goes into extra time, and it goes into penalty shootouts, right? And just St. John's just finds a way to come away with the victory. I think this is what wins it right here for him. And no, actually, no, it's St. Mary's, but then puts that one in, and then I think he misses it. This is they miss, and the game comes to an end. Again, I'm just trying to remember like how this all went down, but St. John's was winning at this point. See what happens. Yeah, the save, and then they end up winning. Yeah. So I mean, like it was just if you want to watch it, you got to go to our YouTube channel, watch it there. But it was a crazy game. And like I said, I even made a video about how many conferences that the referees had. I think it was like 14 or 15 or something like that throughout the course of the game. But so yeah.
All right. Next question on our mailbag: dream team or league to call for? I assume I know where you're going to go with this one, and I think it's interesting. At least for me, I think this has changed over the years. I think I'm a little bit more open to the possibilities, at least now versus where I was when I began doing this. But dream team or league that you would like to be involved in calling games?
I mean, dream team. Locally, I would love the opportunity to call Detroit City FC. Neil Rule is the voice of DCFC. He's been that way really since the onset. Um, League wise, again, I said it earlier. I'd love to be calling Major League Soccer. So if I'm looking at a league standpoint, I'm not like stuck on one team at the in the league. I mean, obviously there's players. You'd want to come maybe to call their name like Messi, Suarez, and the like. Right, that would be kind of cool to do. Honestly, if you were to say like what would be awesome, I mean, it would be awesome to call a U.S. men's national team game, right? That'd be cool too, right? Call a game for America. That'd be awesome.
I guess on my end, it all depends. I guess on when you would have asked me the question. If you would have asked me the question, let's say 5 years ago, I probably would have given you a very specific answer. And that answer would have been in Chicago, taking over for Pat Hughes, calling games for the Cubs at Wrigley Field. And the big reason, for that was, obviously I talked to you about, you know, my dad growing up a huge Cubs fan. And that was kind of his thing growing up because they didn't have lights on the stadium and Harry Carey and the whole thing. That was kind of the height, at least broadcasting wise, in baseball. Harry Carey, who was with them, during his Hall of Fame career, he was kind of the definition of the old school way of calling a game. Going from what it used to be to what it is now, it's still important to have your own individual flavor, your own individual style, and that's still very much a part of what we do. But you're not allowed to drink during the broadcast. You can't take your shirt off and sit amongst the crowd during the broadcast. Those were all things that Harry Carey did, and it was because he was a character that made him so special to the people of Chicago. He was unique. He was one of the most terribly unique broadcasters you've ever seen or heard in your life. And conventionally speaking, maybe not the best broadcaster by the book, but he was so unapologetically him that it made it so alluring. So that's what drew my dad to the Cubs. And then me growing up listening to Pat Hughes, who's already in the Hall of Fame, kind of gave me reason to want to go to Chicago and call for that team, but also just the experience at Wrigley. I mean, it's a cultural experience there, but I always thought Pat Hughes was amazing at what he did. So if you were to ask me that 5 years ago, I'd probably say in Wrigley. Now it's a little bit different. Only because I'm not fully dedicated to one sport, but the other thing is, JT, and you and I have had many talks about this, there are so many different leagues and teams and sports and all that different stuff out there. So I have recently in my career, I haven't limited myself to one thing. So do I have one dream team or league or something along those lines? Not necessarily. I just want to do this at the highest level, wherever that is. If it's the MLS, if it's NCAA Division One, whatever sport that may happen to be, if it's professional baseball, if it's Major League Baseball, all that would be awesome. But in order to, I think for me to be able to make something out of this career, I have to be willing and open to the opportunities. So there used to be a dream location, and I would still love and be honored to be in a position like that. But I'm not going to sell myself on just one specific team or one specific league. I think that's limiting a lot of your options, especially in the modern day of broadcasting where we have the ability to do so many different things. And that's why I'm investigating a lot of different stuff. I mean, obviously doing this, and I've been looking into believe it or not, I've been looking more into esports a little bit. I actually had a conversation with it's not the same soccer that we do, but James Villar is a big name in the esports gaming world. And he actually just recently went to Saudi Arabia to do the FIFA Esports World Cup there in Saudi Arabia. Ever since the esports bubble kind of burst, right after COVID, right around COVID, when everyone started gaming a lot more. And obviously he's gained notoriety in that way. But I would have, and it still probably remains that way. There's a special place in my heart for the north side of Chicago, and especially all those memories of going there and experiencing that and listening to someone like Pat Hughes. But I think now it's a little bit different. I think I'm open to the potential possibilities, and I would recommend that anybody getting into this field look at where the market is, right? Look at what teams need broadcasters. Look at who needs broadcasters. And try to expose that. You know, you and I have said the football market is very saturated. You know, the basketball market oftentimes can be very saturated. In the United States, I'm not going to say it's wide open, but there's a lot more opportunities in the game of soccer. There's a lot more opportunities in some of those other sports that maybe don't get the same or nearly the same amount of media coverage. So, like I said, originally probably in Chicago taking over for Pat Hughes, but obviously that has grown and changed as time has moved along.
Very cool, man. It's very cool. I actually got a question or comment from Peter saying, "How about calling a Champion League game being played at Ford Field?" Um, yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm thinking domestically. If there is in fact, an opportunity to call a game locally that has international ramifications or international league, that'd be great as well. But I'm obviously then those might be few and far between.
What is it? Is there something that gives you pause to calling something internationally?
No, I mean, no, I don't think there's anything about that, not a negative aspect of it. I'm just saying the likelihood of, it's like one of those things: run before you can crawl, or crawl before you can run. Obviously, if you are in the conversation to be a part of that game, oh, absolutely, I'd love to call a game between like a Manchester United and an Arsenal, right? That'd be unbelievable.
Right.
But typically those games too, when they're played here, they're more scrimmages, right? They're friendlies, right? They're not like the same ramifications that you might have if you were across the pond, in the middle of the actual league table. But I think we just lost Nathan for a second. He'll be back, I'd imagine. But no, I don't. To answer his question, I would not mind calling one of those games. Just I was thinking more domestically here in the United States. Trying to get Nathan back in. See what happens here. Well, we are about 15 minutes away, or 15 minutes or so away from the end of our fifth episode. If it's your first time stopping by, hit that like, subscribe, follow us on all social media. You can watch this on National Soccer Network, both on YouTube and on Facebook and Twitter right now, as well as our Roku TV channel at Live Soccer. National Soccer Network TV or .TV, and yeah. So Nathan's just telling me he's trying to get back in. We do use a platform called StreamYard. Again, I'm in a hotel here in Chicago. Nathan's in Grand Rapids, and when you're not plugged in, via Ethernet, that can obviously create problems with being able to stay on and whatnot. I don't have his mailbag questions, so whatever Nathan has, he was firing at me, and I was not prepared for them. So either way, if you have any questions and you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on Twitter or Facebook, get your questions and we'll try to get them in the actual broadcast. I believe you can bring in basically comments from almost every platform, except no, Facebook will not allow us to do it here on the platform or Twitter, but we can get them in from YouTube. So if you want to head over to YouTube and get a question or comment in, by all means, please do so. All right. So throughout this show, we've talked about a number of things. One of those, obviously, being these mailbag questions, and I'm here in Chicago right now at the United Soccer Coaches Convention. I had a chance yesterday to meet with a really really cool people and just different businesses throughout the soccer community. I will continue to do that today. And we'll talk more about that on Monday after I finish up these meetings and get back home. We have some games here tonight on the platform, MASL games. Those games kicking off. I'll tell you the schedule right now. I think they kick off at 8 o'clock, or sorry, 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock here in Eastern time. See if I can find our schedule. I apologize. Nathan's still trying to get back on, obviously. Tonight, first game, again, kicks off at game number 48, kicks off at 9 p.m. Eastern. It's Dallas Sidekicks as they take on the Chihuahua Savage. And then we have, I believe that game kicks off. Actually, I'm looking at the wrong game. Game 40 kicks off tonight at 9 o'clock, January the 10th. It's St. Louis Ambush versus Chihuahua Savage. And then MASL game 41, that kicks off at 10:05. That's between the San Diego Sockers and the Tacoma Stars. I think we've got possibly have Nathan back. Are you there, dude?
I'm here. Are you here?
Yeah, what happened, man?
Your guess is as good as mine, Jonathan Turner.
Are you? I know I'm on Wi-Fi. Are you on Wi-Fi?
I am on Wi-Fi, and I'm not a tech guy. I got to get someone to figure out what's going on, but
No worries. So I know we just kind of wrapped up. We were just talking about that Champions League game, and that'd be fun to do. Obviously, I wasn't thinking in that way when the original question was asked, but obviously, any high level game, I'd love to. But what other questions you got for us?
The other question on this list, and I guess I don't know, I wouldn't know where to go with this one specifically. There's been a couple of different places. Favorite location your job has ever taken you to, or it could be asked, favorite place you've ever had to travel to in order to call a game?
Yeah, at this point, the furthest I've gone to call a game would be Irvine, California. I did that last February for the UPSL National Finals. That was the furthest. That was a fun experience. I mean, I'm just trying to think about obviously the games we've called at Laura.com Field. We've called two games there. I've called games at historic Columbus Crew Stadium. I've been to Virginia and called a game at Loudoun United Stadium in Leesburg, Virginia, which is about 45 minutes or so from Washington D.C., which we had a chance to visit while I was there. So we've had some really really cool places that we've had a chance to, or I've had a chance to go to and call games. Obviously remotely. I mean, I've been in Mesa, Arizona. We've been in San Diego. We've been in Florida. I've been,
Right.
in Pittsburgh. So I mean, we can go anywhere. Oklahoma City, right? So I mean, that's been pretty cool. So yeah, so I mean that's I would say at this point those are the places that have taken me the furthest. I know there's that you said so it was the most interesting place, but what was there part of that question? Maybe I'm
Well, it's just like favorite location you've ever been to call a game.
yeah, favorite location. I mean, obviously I mentioned I went to Irvine. The favorite location to call a game. Um, that's a really good question. I can tell you what was not my favorite location to call
Okay, we'll
games.
start there.
Um, I I love. I'm not going to name like the college, but I cannot stand calling some soccer games. In uh, outdoors when you're not in the press box. That just drives me nuts. And that's the thing too. We have to have a conversation about that here at some point in time on this platform and talk about how hard it is for colleges to compete when they have worse, facilities than high schools.
It,
That's a real thing.
yep. Yep.
And
And how do you
I mean, if
compete
you're
when you don't have the budget to do so?
well, yeah, I mean, that's just yeah, it's crazy. Most interesting or the most not interesting, but the place I like to call games or whatever you want to call it. I mean, from a press box standpoint, I love Grand Ledge. I think Grand Ledge's press box is in the high school like space is probably the best press box we've been in at in the high school level. Um, I love Atwood. Atwood, aside from the fact that it's when the heat of the summer, it's a million degrees in there. That's bothersome to me. Um, but I'm just trying to get. Yeah, I think that'd be it. There's so many places we've been to, and it's really hard. I mean, like, how can I say Lore.com is not the best, right? Lore.com, right? I mean,
Well,
that's.
in
I mean,
terms of,
it's like
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, to the viewer at home, they're like, well, yeah, Lore.com would be like the best press box I've ever been in because legitimately it is set up for like every possible scenario of game. When I went to Leesburg, Virginia, we had to put tents up and make our own press box because they don't have press boxes there. Like, you know what I mean? So that was a great
Yeah.
place to go to, but like, and I have a great story about that I'll share with you in another time. But you mentioned power. We lost power in the last minute of the game because a rainstorm came through and just wiped everything out. So, but yeah, that's what I would say.
Mine's, I guess, if we're talking about the city itself and the experience of going to a particular city, I would have to say my favorite, it's probably Traverse City. Being up there for summer was amazing in terms of just the location of the place that I'm calling games. It doesn't really get much better than that. And it's beautiful aesthetically speaking. Seems like everybody's in a good mood too. Thing is like there are different types of games that you call. There are some where you're like, this is a feel good, free and easy kind of game. When you're talking about baseball in Traverse City, summer collegiate, middle of the summer, cherry festival, 4th of July, everyone's just showing up and having a good time. Like no one's all wrapped up in what's the result. You know what I mean? If the Pit Spitters don't end up winning, that's their name, by the way, which I think is amazing for Traverse City. Pit Spitters. The Dune Bears was the other idea, which I thought that was the I my recommendation was the Northern Michigan Sleeping Bears because the Sleeping Bear Dunes is like 10 minutes away. So I thought that would win out. It didn't end up winning out. But anyways, I tried to name the team. But the location and the aura and the energy around that place is really what makes at least Traverse City and baseball in Traverse City really special. Um, in the historic Crew Stadium, yeah. No, I mean it. That Lower.com was cool in terms of facilities themselves. That was one of the coolest. My favorite part about that experience was the fact that they hadn't gotten the freaking confetti off the field because they had just won the MLS Cup. We were literally playing. What was it? The next day, 2 days later, something like that.
No, it was
There was
like
a
literally the next day. They had won it.
yeah,
No, it may have been 2 days later. It was, I think, yeah, we did it on a Monday. They had won it on a Saturday. So yeah,
yeah,
we were there the next. I mean, no, you can't think of anything
you
cooler
can't
than that.
right. So in
And
terms
that's
of
what I'm saying. Like
city, yeah,
it probably sounds disingenuous too, right? Because we're sitting here going, "Wow, we just experienced that," and most people aren't going to experience like that like we did. I mean, you might experience calling a game at a really cool place, but to be there the day after they won an MLS Cup and
yeah,
matter of fact, we were walking into the building and they were having like a shareholder meeting about the money that was it was just really cool like to be there at that time
right.
at Laura.com and obviously historic Columbus Crew that stadium it's a shell of what it used to be obviously but
Yeah.
it's still a really cool place.
So city wise, I will say Traverse City. Facility wise, Lower.com field was really nice. The best stadium I've ever gotten to call a game in, though, kind of wraps its way back to the whole bizarre experience aspect of our conversation here today. Has to be the Big House, Michigan Stadium. I
Hmm.
got to call an opening week football game there from the press level. Um, there's about 100 levels of stairs that you have to go down and back up. If you want to get down to the field, I did that about 4 or 5 times that day. You begin to understand why it's the biggest stadium in the Western Hemisphere. That one was really cool. And it's one of those stadiums where I talk about how binoculars are always huge for our job, especially if you're in person. You're not going to be able to call a game there without binoculars. That play, you were so high up And until you walk in that building, you don't really understand how big it is. And the bizarre part was we were actually doubling up that day that we were there. So we were calling that high school football game, but the Whitecaps were still playing. So when they go on the road, typically we'll call the game from a studio. We don't travel with the team every single time. So we had to call the Whitecaps game after our game had concluded. And there were other football games after ours. Like this was a whole big tournament thing. But those games wrap up, and our baseball game is still going to this moment. So we have to tear down all of our broadcast equipment because they're trying to get us up and out of there. I mean, Michigan, their security, especially around the big house. I mean, that's they protect that with their life. I end up having to call the remainder of the Whitecaps game from a an iPad in my hand into the speaker as I'm walking, because the quickest way to get out of Michigan Stadium is to go down the stairs, across the 50, through the tunnel, the Lloyd Carr tunnel, and out into the parking lot. That is the quickest way to get out of Michigan Stadium. So I'm calling a minor league game from an iPad in my hands as I'm walking across the 50-yard line of a completely empty big house. It was the most
Wow.
eerie, surreal feeling of my life. I pulled out my camera and I got pictures and everything. I would try to share my screen because I think I still have the video of me doing it, and we can do that on the next episode if you want. The last time I tried to share my screen, this entire operation came crashing down. So I'm gonna not do that in our final 3.5 minutes of the show. But I think the big house probably has to be, at least the venue itself, probably the coolest I've ever done a game from. Now I hope if I ever get the chance to do one for Michigan that there's a monitor in front of me, because goodness gracious, that was tough without one. But that probably, at least venue wise, that has to be the best. You think you got room for one more? You can just answer this one because I think this is more of a you specific question.
Sure.
How did you go from transitioning from a Michigan based network to a nationally based network? And why did you do it?
Well, it's in progress, right? So, um, the why is a couple things. One is we realized when we started doing this that we could have a pretty good thing here in Michigan. And there's enough soccer here, enough soccer in Michigan to really to do a lot of really cool things. But as we've been doing these games, the conversation's always been from people out there who watch our games and are a part of them. Is like, hey, we'd love to have you come to Ohio. We'd love to have you come to Seattle. We'd love to have you come wherever. And that's been the reason why. And so as part of our growth model, as part of what I've been working on, over the last couple of years, as far as the R&D, the research and development to get us to that point, it's about scaling what we've done in Michigan so that it would work in other states. And that's why we started to do that. And then, you know, um, again, it's a work in progress. Just like we're not. I don't have the bankroll of a Galaz, CBS Sports, or NBC. Right? We're trying to do this in a very measured and calculated way, and so we'll do it in the form of content that we get from the leagues that we contract with, and then ultimately it'll start to grow on its natural organic way over the next 6 to 12 months. I mean, we expect a lot of traction here, especially starting going into the months of March, April, and May. Is when things will really pick up. Because right now it's really kind of not the dead period, but it's a slower time of soccer because outdoor soccer isn't happening right now across 80% of the United States. You're seeing it. You'll see it pick up again here in April and May.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I got a few others. Obviously, we could tackle that on future episodes, but yeah, I mean, I just think there's an opportunity. You're right, to just have a bigger impact, and as long as we can continue to expand our reach, because I know obviously we have the capability to call games well, and we've proven that from a remote studio. And we can talk about obviously the transition of the broadcasting world from being mostly in person to even remote, and even the highest of the high companies, ESPN, CBS, they all do that. But you're right. No, I think there's a great opportunity in front of us.
No question, no question. Well, that will be a wrap here on episode number 5. I'll have to start using two hands next week. In regards to our episodes, don't forget, subscribe, like us, share this with your friends and family. If you like what we're doing, make sure you rate us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Episodes from this week are already there. I'll try and get this one up here right now. But yeah, have a great rest of your weekend. Nathan, I'll be back in Michigan here tomorrow afternoon, and we'll get ready to go here on Monday morning for another edition of Inside the Game.
Peace.
So long, everybody.